This is Team 1's presentation on why clear and ethical written communication is important and how it affects you. Throughout our presentation, we will share our thesis, provide an overview of the written miscommunications with JPMorgan Chase and Wells Fargo and Company. We'll go more in depth regarding the fake account scandal with Wells Fargo and the mortgage scandal with JPMorgan. We'll discuss who is responsible for each situation with written communication that caused or exacerbated situations. And finally, we'll reiterate why clear and ethical written communication is important and how it affects you. Our references will be posted at the end for review. Had JPMorgan Chase and Wells Fargo and Company provided written guidance that stressed the importance of ethical practices versus pushing unreasonable expectations onto employees through their directives and performance evaluations, each company would have avoided the loss of millions of dollars, thousands of customers, and the trust of many. As we begin with a brief overview of each company's miscommunications, we'll start with Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo executives placed impossible quotas on employees regarding the number of new accounts they should be opening each day. Many employees were not able to meet this goal. However, because of the pressure from branch and regional managers, the fear of termination if the quotas were not met, along with the incentives of meeting quotas, some employees decided to do what they had to do to meet the expectations. Wells Fargo encouraged employees to secure new accounts by cross-selling, meaning their existing customers who might only have a checking account were encouraged to open more accounts. When customers declined the new products, however, some employees proceeded to open the accounts without the customer's knowledge or consent. In the end, Wells Fargo admits to opening millions of unauthorized accounts for their customers. Unlike Wells Fargo, JPMorgan did not open new accounts for customers. They tried to dupe other banks and government agencies. Just before the 2008 financial crisis, JPMorgan bought out two failing banks. In March, Bear Stearns, and in September they took over Washington Mutual. With the takeovers, they also acquired the existing accounts of customers from each banking institution. Once they were able to review the accounts, they realized that many of the mortgages were in default and should have never been approved to begin with. So, they began to manipulate the data, portraying mortgages that were delinquent to be current, and changed assessments of the mortgages to be more favorable to those they were trying to offload them on. I want you to think for a moment about these two situations. What would you do if you were an associate at Wells Fargo facing termination if your quotas weren't met? What if you were one of the executives at either financial institution? How could clear and ethical written communication have changed the ending of these stories? How would you respond to these directives as an associate, and how could you have prevented these events as an executive? You may just find yourself in these positions in the not-so-distant future.
Thank you so much, Jamie. Now I will talk more about the Wells Fargo fake account scandal. Wells Fargo, previously to meet the market standards, was at a goal of cross-selling 3 accounts per customer, but upped it to an unbelievable 8 accounts. When asked why the amount was 8, John Stumpf, Wells Fargo's chief executive officer at the time, was quoted as saying it rhymed with great. With the unrealistic sales goals that were set for employees and the sales pressure to cross-sell products, associates, at least 5,000, felt pressured to start fraudulently signing clients up for these accounts themselves. Despite what some believe, it was not just fraudulently opened accounts, but also misinformation about account fees. Clients were advised by bankers that they don't need to use the account and it would simply sit dormant when in fact the accounts would start collecting fees. There were associates who did notice the unethical practices of others and were penalized when speaking up. Some even were fired for not meeting the sales goals and truly for not participating in the unethical activity. Over the course of the scandal, as was mentioned by my team member, 2.2 million accounts, both deposit and credit cards, were opened under fraudulent circumstances. Wells Fargo reported that 5,300 employees were let go due to their participation in the unethical practices that were taking place. According to the Congressional Research Service in February 2020, Wells Fargo agreed to pay $3 billion to the Department of Justice and the Security Exchange Commission to resolve the criminal activities it participated in against its customers. Of the $3 billion settlement, the Security Exchange Commission was to distribute $500 million to Wells Fargo's investors. Although it was not affected as much as expected, the Wells Fargo stock price did take a small hit of about $13 a share between July 2015 to October 2016, when word got out about the scandal. Here's a short timeline of the Wells Fargo scandal. As you can see, there are a few instances between the time of the scandal up to now where Wells Fargo had to pay the price for its unethical practices. Thousands of employees lost their jobs, and CEO John Stumpf retired shortly after.
The J.P. Morgan mortgage scandal. Due to the unethical communication within J.P. Morgan, the 2008 market crash was exacerbated heavily. J.P. Morgan used credit derivatives to get around keeping a limit of given loans based on their liquid assets, causing their own form of rapid inflation. This caused the value of the dollar in real estate to plummet and the prices of most properties to skyrocket. When the market crashed, customers couldn't pay back their loans, causing the properties to go into foreclosure and the taxes to fall back onto J.P. Morgan. In order to avoid paying the fees in 2013, J.P. Morgan forgave the debts of everyone. This meant the customers who took out loans originally were being made responsible for the originally foreclosed properties with the taxes and various fees that came with it. When customers began realizing what happened, the press became informed of the situation. The government shortly stepped in, charging the institution for its malpractice, false records, and property fees, along with being charged for causing the entire recession. This settlement ended upwards of $13 billion. These are the stock prices of J.P. Morgan from 1990 to current. You can see after the year 2000, the stocks began to decline through the early 2000s and then shoot right back up temporarily around 2006. This signifies the section of time just before the crisis when credit derivatives were being abused before it became a huge detriment on the economy. However, after the crisis, the stock prices of J.P. Morgan began stagnating into its lower brackets. This was due to a lack of customer trust after the events of 2008. How did J.P. Morgan try to pay back the money they owed in property mortgages? Did they A, forgive all the mortgages, removing the ownership and responsibility for the property, B, with the government bailout, or C, they didn't? The answer is A. They forgave all the defaulted loans, meaning the ones who took out loans on these properties were now the owners of them. This meant they were responsible for the property fees and upkeep of the properties. Which two firms did J.P. Morgan acquire during the 2008 financial crisis? Was it A, Goldman Sachs and Bear Stearns, B, Bear Stearns and Washington Mutual, C, Citigroup and Goldman Sachs, or D, Washington Mutual and Citigroup? The answer is B, Bear Stearns and Washington Mutual. They began going out of business during the crisis, so JP Morgan bought both of the firms in order to further grow their bank.
After taking a look into the written miscommunication involved in these scandals, we are now going to go deeper into who is actually responsible within these companies and the ramifications of their actions. The intense sales quotas initiated by the upper executives and assigned to Wells Fargo branches fell into the hands of the branch managers. In order for their branches to meet these high daily goals of 8 accounts per employee using the GR8 initiative, the managers created a tempting incentive program which could raise employee salaries up to 20% if they met their goals. At the time, the Wells Fargo CEO and later CFO Tim Sloan was quoted saying, "I'm not aware of any overbearing sales culture." End quote. This scandal hit the company hard both internally and externally. Thousands of employees were fired, and millions of dollars were refunded to the Wells Fargo clients. However, the brunt of the damage from this scandal was more detrimental reputationally than fiscally. It is taking time for Wells Fargo to rebuild trust with their clients and overall brand name. With Wells Fargo working towards establishing trust again, an independent consulting firm has reviewed all newly opened Wells Fargo accounts since 2011. Flipping back to JP Morgan Chase, the company had employees, like bankers, who assembled the mortgages, overlooked numbers, and finalized assessments. These associates were responsible for editing these false files. The CEO at the time was even criticizing those attacking JP Morgan and said that the bank did the federal government a favor by rescuing Bear Stearns in 2008 and that these rescuings were done to support the country. Like Wells Fargo, JP Morgan Chase is still facing reputational and financial damage from this scandal. They were even given a $13 billion settlement that goes back to the homeowners and taxpayers impacted by their actions. Here we have a few more questions based off the information we've been presenting. What was the name of the Wells Fargo employee initiative to open multiple accounts? The answer would be B, great. What did JP Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon say about the company taking over Bear Stearns and Washington Mutual? The correct answer would be A, it was done to support the country.
Hello, my name is Justin Reese, and in the next couple of slides we'll be reviewing the importance and the effects of the JP Morgan and Wells Fargo scandals. The unethical and miscommunication between the consumers and the employees of both Wells Fargo and JP Morgan Chase became a risk to their employees as well as their companies' reputations. Because of these scandals, the companies have not only seen a decrease in new accounts being opened, but they also saw a lot of their own employees waving the red flag and subsequently leaving their banks. This is extremely important because of a lot of people that rely on these banks, trust these banks to keep their money safe and to be transparent with every transaction that they do. So you might be asking yourself, why is this important to me? How does this affect me? Well, due to the overwhelming evidence and repercussions that each company had endured, it is clear to see that due to these scandals, miscommunication between management and employees ultimately led to the decline in business inquiries. These next two slides are the reputable sources that our team had acquired throughout the duration of this project.